Hello, all. Welcome to the day two of our AL report development session. And today we'll be talking about what is a data set of a report and how you actually build it. So, before we begin that, thank you for all the love and support that you have shown for the day one. I would encourage everybody to add their questions as comments to the video so that I can cover most of the commonly asked questions. Okay, so let's not waste time and let's open our Visual Studio Code. Okay. Now, all this code that we'll be writing today or in future in this particular series can be accessed on my GitHub page. There's a repo called AL Report Dev. All the changes that we'll be doing during this series can be accessed from this link, and I'll also make it in the description of the video, add it into the description of the video. Okay, so what should we do? Okay. We're planning to do build a list report, and we are only focusing on the data set because that's, as we understood earlier also, it's an important part for the report dev. So as we begin, I have already defined my app.json and other parameters. Let me try downloading symbols from my Docker. Oh, I don't have it. Launch.json, so I'll just set that up. This is my Docker container. If you're working on prem for report development, you can set the parameter based on your environment. Okay. Now, once that is done, I prefer and I would suggest to create a folder called source or src, whatever you prefer. I prefer src, that makes it easier. And then typically, I prefer to keep different type of objects in one specific folder. That makes it more readable. So I'll also create a new folder inside it and I'll name it as reports. The name of the folder is very important, and the case in which you have typed the name of the folder is also important because it's very specific for the reports how you name the folders where the files will be placed, and we'll understand it. Now inside that, let's add a new file and let's try to add a report on a list report of all the sales invoice line, let's say, just to be random. So I'll use the name, this is my prefix, and then say sales invoice lines dot report dot al. Let's use the snippet that comes with Microsoft extension called T-report, and this will give me a skeleton of the report, which will tell me what all elements I can use in the report. That just gives you a framework. So I'll use the snippet and it'll give me the framework. I'll number this as, let's say, 50,000. And the name of the report would be whatever my file name is. It's SDH lines. Hope that doesn't crosses the 30 character limit. Okay. Now, before we get into it, I just want to show you some properties which are very important. What I'll do is I'll open my Business Central Docker environment so that we know why we are changing certain properties. Okay, let's save this. So when you use this search feature, or we call it as tell me feature, you can search for certain things. You can search for a page, you can search for a report, or pages and reports are majorly added into this tell me feature. And that works based on a property called application area. And then there is one more property called users category, which defines under which menu that item will be grouped. Now it's up to you. Do you want to place this report into the menu, or you want to add it into a page action? So it's, if you're not going to have users search this report, then you don't need these two properties. If you want users to search these report, then you'll have to define these properties. So the users category for reports is majorly reports and analysis, and the application area in this case is all. Okay. And if required, we can talk about why application area is all someday in future. Okay. Now the main item which we are going to discuss today is the data set. And as you can see in the skeleton, we see a section called dataset. Now, as we have discussed in the previous video, dataset is a collection of one or more data items, and a data item is in turn a collection of columns. And then we talk in detail about what different kind of columns you can add into a report in the first video. Data items are tables in your database, either a Microsoft table, your extension table, or if you have an ISV, then ISV table. In this case, we need sales invoice line. So what we'll do is we will change the data item and change it with the name of the table, which is sales invoice line. Now, the first property is the name, and the second property is a source expression. When you click on it, you should be able to see it. And let me remove this for a while. So the first is the name, and the second is the table name, or the source expression, more or less the way we say it. So you can change it if required. It's up to you. If you don't want to change it, that's also okay. But you can't change the part 2 because that's the table name, actual table name. Now, once this is done, and let me remove the extra brackets, the next thing is to add columns that you want. Now, let's open Business Central, and let's open, when I'm saying sales invoice line, that means posted sales invoices and the lines in that. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to print all the lines which are available for different posted invoices in the system. And let's try to pick some columns. Let's say I want type, I want number, I want quantity. I also want, there are other hidden fields. Let's say amounts, amount including VAT, line amount, and other things. So let's go ahead and do that. So the same rule as we followed for the data item, the same rule follows for the column, that you have a column name and then you have the source field based on which that value is being fetched from. So let's say if I want to add the type, I can just start typing type and it'll give me that. Inside that, if you have to add multiple columns, you can do that. Let's say number, that's a field that's supported. If I have to add quantity, I can do that. Let's add a date field because I just want to cover one more thing. So let's look for dates. Okay. Posting date. Okay. And let's pick some amount columns. Okay. Amount or line amount. Line amount. Okay. And then also let's pick one more column. Okay. Just amount, I guess that'll be sufficient. Okay. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to add some random fields so that we understand some nuances about the data set. Now what I've done is I've added an option field, enum field to be very specific, and then I've also added a code field, and then I've added few decimal fields, and I've also added a date field. So I'm more or less trying to cover everything and there are some nuances based on this different fields that we have selected, and we'll understand that. For now, I there's nothing I guess at this point. There is something, so I'll remove this for a while, and we'll use this section in future someday. Okay. So just this 15, 16 line of code will build the data set of my report that I need. And that is what's needed before we start designing our report. And as we have discussed in the last video, the smaller the data set is, the better your report performance will be. So we need to keep that in mind. So now once we have done this, we can actually save this and let's try to publish this. As I have used the prefix here, I don't want users to see this. So I'll also add a property called caption. And the caption of this report will be sales invoice lines. So when user searches for it, they don't have to search for the SDH sales invoice line. They can actually search for the sales invoice line. And that seems a problem. So let me remove this. Okay, this seems to be working. Am I doing something wrong? I don't think so. Okay. Sales invoice lines. Okay. Now let's try to publish this and let's try to see in the client how it looks. As we haven't done any design part, so there is nothing that can be printed on the client. Let's have a look. Okay, report seems to be published. Now let's go ahead and search for sales invoice lines. That's a report and analysis because we have tagged it as report and analysis. Let's click on it and that opens the request page. Now while I'm recording this, I'm doing it on Business Central 19.1, which means that if you are doing it on other versions, you might see some options which may not be visible if you are on a low versions of Business Central. If I do a preview, I'll not be able to see anything because there is no printable output at this point. But what I can do is I can click on send to, which gives me different options of PDF, but there's no layout, so no PDF, no Word, no data because no layout, so I cannot use this. But then there's a new option that was added somewhere in Business Central 17.1 or 2, I'm not very sure, which gives you the data only, which provides you the information of the data set. So what I can do is I can actually click on this and this will download an Excel file. So when I click on this, this will open the Excel file on my system, which will have a transposed copy of the data set that I just built in my AL environment. So let's keep them side by side and let's have a look. So the column is type, the column is number, which I've added, the quantity column, the posting date column, the line amount column, and the amount column. But you'll also notice that there are some columns which are hidden. There is A, B, C, and then the D is hidden and G is hidden. So let's unhide them and see what they are. So when you unhide these columns, you get some text which are used for formatting that number or that field. For each numeric field that you'll use, Business Central automatically adds a format field, like it have done for quantity and it have also done for the amount. Now this might not be the right color because you cannot read that. Okay. Now this field is used to format the value in your design. So the data set, which is this file, if you think of it, is used while you are developing your design of your report. So this is very important what you put into it. You know. Now we have also talked about different kind of columns that you can add. You can also have a formula into your column when you are adding it in Business Central. So let's think of an example. If I also want the line number column, just to explain you, I can do a line number as I'll do for any other field. But then in the source expression, which is on the right hand side of my column, I can actually have a formula, which can be, let's say, negative of whatever the line number is. I want that in my data set. So if the line number is 1000, I should get a minus 1000 in my data set. If the number is minus 100, which will never be, I should get a positive 100. Now, all this can be done in your data set and you don't have to handle it if you have a situation like that. If you have to add a line number and the line amount, just to kind of show you this, let's add one more time. And let's say line number amount. And I can do a line number plus line amount if needed. So you can apply all your formulas that you need in your data set specifically for being to get your data set the way you want. And that will reduce the amount of work that you'll have to do once you are in your design mode. So right now, if I look for my sales invoice, okay, I forgot the lines. And I again send to and do an Excel. I get the new Excel. This time, I get the line number in this case as minus 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, and those values. But then I also get a line number amount, which is the sum of the positive value of this plus this. So if you actually change this value from minus and you add these two columns, you should actually get a value which is this. So what I'm trying to explain you here is there are different types of columns that you can add in your report, and based on whatever the calculation that you have done, the value will be used for the layout. Now, how the left part of the column is used, because that's very important also. Because system always generates these underscores if there is a space in the name like this. I prefer to keep it simple so that I can utilize these later. So if I have to keep this as my data set, this is what I'll be using while I'm referring these fields in my design. So the name of the column is used in the design of your report. So this is very important that you keep it very clear what you want, and so that it can be used there. The other thing that's kind of not seems as warning right now, which is the with the statement. In this case, that should be warning because I'm not suggesting from where this field is coming from. There's the implicit with, which is saying that, oh, this field is referring to the parent, which is sales invoice line in this case. So I should actually be doing this for the future, which is the data set, data item name referred on each of the column of my report, if it is a field that is derived from the table. By doing this, I'm making sure that this report will not break when the with statements are deprecated in future. This was more or less what we wanted to talk about today. We'll go into the design part maybe in the next video, but let's go through and understand the properties of this report. So while we were searching for this report, if you haven't noticed, in the sales invoice lines, this there's this new option where you can choose which printer it will be used to. But at the same time, uh, the columns also have their own properties. So inside these two curly braces, you can define different properties, which are you can have decimal places if it's a numeric or decimal field. You can have a description. We'll talk about include captions going forward, but there are certain properties that you can use in the report columns if needed. In the same way, there are some properties at the data item level. If you have to set them, you can always do a control space and you can see all the properties which are relevant to that particular section. So with this, what we have understood is how you build the data set of your report, of a simple list report, in this case, which will be printing the sales invoice lines. Now, in the next video, we'll talk about how you start building the layout of this report, the simple list report, and what all you can do on the layout. Now, let me know your views as comments to this video. Do share these videos if you think they are useful for people who are learning Business Central. And if you have any questions, feel free to add them into comments. I'll try to capture and answer those questions if they were asked during the recording of these sessions. I, you know, I'll try to do it later, but it gets hard over there later. So have a nice day and see you next time.